Michael shook his head. Don't apologize for that. I'm relieved you stayed home. You needed to. Actually, I'd feel a lot better if a doctor looked at you just in case. Oh, that's not necessary, Grace began, but a sudden wave of dizziness from standing too long made her sentence trail off. She hadn't eaten much since yesterday, and the stress was catching up to her. Swaying, she put a hand to her head. In an instant, Michael closed the remaining distance and gently took her arm to support her. You're not fine, he said, concern evident in his voice. Please, let me help. I can take you to the hospital now. It's really no trouble. Grace found herself caught between pride and need. She hated hospitals, mainly because she couldn't easily afford them, and she certainly never expected to ride in her boss's personal car. But one look at Michael's earnest, caring expression and the worry on Daniel's face, and her resistance crumbled. All right, she conceded softly. Thank you, sir. Michael offered a comforting smile. Please call me Michael. He gestured toward the car. My driver is right here. We'll have you checked out in no time. Before Grace knew it, she was seated in the back of the plush Mercedes with Daniel clinging to her side and Michael sitting in the front passenger seat. The drive to the nearby clinic was a blur to Grace. Her head was light from the surrealness of it all. She quietly instructed Daniel, You shouldn't have run off like that. But I'm so proud of you, she whispered, kissing his forehead. Daniel beamed and snuggled close, relief flooding him now that his mother wasn't angry and that she was getting care. At the hospital, Michael used his influence to ensure Grace was seen quickly. A kind doctor examined her. She had a bruised rib and was badly dehydrated and stressed, but nothing broken. Still, they wanted to keep her for the day on fluids and pain management. Grace fretted about the cost, but Michael gently placed a hand on her shoulder. It's covered. Don't worry about that. When she tried to protest, he gave her a friendly but firm look that brooked no argument. Your job provides health insurance, remember? I'll make sure it takes care of this, he added tactfully, allowing her to save face by attributing it to her employment benefits. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Grace blinked back tears. I don't know how to thank you, she said quietly. Michael shook his head with a smile. There's no need to thank me for doing what's right. He looked over at Daniel, who was sitting by his mother's hospital bed holding her hand. You raised a very brave boy. He loves you so much. Enough to take on a bully twice his size. Grace managed a soft laugh at that, eyes shining. She reached out and stroked Daniel's hair. I know. He's my little hero. Daniel blushed, but squeezed her hand proudly. Michael stayed at the hospital far longer than Grace would have ever expected. He personally saw to it that she was comfortable, bringing Daniel a bottle of Fanta and a snack from the vending machine so the child wouldn't go hungry while waiting. Despite her initial anxiety at having her company's CEO see her in such a vulnerable state, Grace soon realized that Michael was there as a concerned friend, not a judgmental boss. They spoke a little about Daniel's school, about how Grace was feeling, but Michael didn't press her for more than she was willing to share. His presence was calm and reassuring. By late afternoon, the doctor gave the go-ahead for Grace to go home with medications and instructions to rest for a few days. Michael insisted on driving them back. As the car navigated through Accra's afternoon traffic, Grace mustered the courage to speak the gratitude overflowing in her heart. Michael, I'm truly grateful for everything you did today. You saved me in more ways than one. Michael turned slightly in his seat to face her. I couldn't have done anything if Daniel hadn't spoken up, he replied warmly. He's the real hero here. He nodded towards the boy, who grinned sleepily from his mother's lap, finally looking at ease. But I'm glad I was in a position to help. No one under my watch should be treated the way you were. I only wish I'd known earlier. Grace shook her head. You had no way of knowing. I didn't speak up. I was too scared of losing my job. I needed to take care of my son, so I just endured it. She lowered her eyes, ashamed that she hadn't been braver. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. I understand. and I'm so sorry you had to endure it. But please know, Grace, that you never have to be afraid to speak to me or HR about anything like that. We value you." Those words stunned Grace. We value you. How many years had it been since she'd heard something like that directed at her? Overwhelmed, she could only nod, blinking back tears again. At last, they reached Grace's home. Michael escorted Grace and Daniel to their door, like an old friend seeing them home after an outing. Before he left, he handed Grace a card with his personal phone number. "This is my direct line. If you need anything while you recover, or any time, please call me, even if it's after hours." Grace looked at the card as if it were made of gold. "I will. Thank you," she said softly. "You've been so kind." Michael smiled, a touch of fondness in his expression that made Grace's stomach flutter unexpectedly. "Take care of yourself, Grace. And you too, young man," he added, giving Daniel a playful salute. Daniel giggled and saluted back, which made both adults laugh, a sound of relief and budding friendship. With a final wave, Michael headed back to his car, leaving Grace and her son watching him with grateful hearts. As the luxury car pulled away down the quiet Accra street, Grace felt an emotion she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Over the next few days, Grace rested at home as ordered, her pain subsiding and strength returning. She received daily calls, sometimes even a bouquet of get-well flowers, from the office. What surprised her most was that the usually aloof senior management now seemed to care. The head of HR called to apologize for what happened and assured her that her position was secure and she could take paid sick leave. It was as if Michael's intervention had triggered a wave of support around her. Grace suspected that he had a hand in all of it, working behind the scenes to make sure she was treated with the respect she deserved. Daniel returned to school after the term break with a newfound spring in his step. He proudly recounted, in a somewhat exaggerated fashion to his best friend, how he had fought off a villain to save his mom, though he left out the scariest parts. At home, he kept close watch on Grace, fetching her water or her medicine at the slightest hint of discomfort. Grace often pulled him into a hug and whispered, "What would I do without you, my little man?" A week later, once she was feeling better, Grace got a call from Michael asking if he could visit that evening. Grace's heart fluttered at the thought. Since when does the CEO make house calls? She hurried to tidy their small home, instructing Daniel to wash up and wear a clean shirt. When Michael arrived, he wasn't alone. He had a woman from the HR department with him, carrying some folders. They sat together with Grace on the sofa. Michael politely ignored the sagging cushions and cramped space, treating her home with the same respect he would a boardroom. "Grace," Michael began kindly, "we at the company have been reviewing what happened, and it's clear that you were severely mistreated. As I said, I want to make sure nothing like this happens again. Not to you, not to anyone. So, we've been thinking about how to improve your work situation." Grace listened with uncertainty, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was glad Linda was gone, but she hadn't thought beyond returning to her normal cleaning job as soon as she was able. "Improve? My work situation?" she echoed. The HR representative, a friendly woman named Karen, spoke up with a smile. "Yes, Michael, Mr. Owusu, suggested that perhaps you've been in the janitorial role due to circumstance, not because you lack skills. We saw in your file that you completed secondary school and even had some secretarial training before, correct?" Grace nodded, a bit embarrassed. It was true. Before her husband's death and her subsequent struggles, she had done a short secretarial course. But life's hardships had forced her to take any job available, including cleaning. "I did, but that was years ago," she said softly. Michael leaned forward, eyes warm. "Skills can be refreshed. Karen here is prepared to offer you a new position in the company, if you're interested, an office assistant role with better pay and hours. We'd arrange some retraining to help you get up to speed. There's also an opening in the mailroom that might be suitable. The choice is yours, and there's no pressure, but we want to support you in whatever path you prefer." Grace was stunned. For a moment she was sure she must have misheard. They were offering her a promotion, a chance to wear tidy business clothes and work at a desk rather than scrubbing floors. A better salary could mean she wouldn't struggle so much to pay rent and school fees. Her hand flew to her mouth as she felt a sob of gratitude rising in her throat. I don't know what to say, she managed, voice choked. No one has ever done something like this for me. Daniel, who had been quietly eavesdropping from the kitchen doorway, broke into a huge grin. They're helping you, Mom, he piped up excitedly, then remembered to be polite. Sorry for interrupting. Karen chuckled, and Michael turned to smile at Daniel. We're helping each other. Your mom is a valued part of our team, and we want her to be happy. And Daniel, he reached into a leather briefcase he'd brought and pulled out an envelope. This is something for you, too. Curious, Daniel stepped closer as Michael handed Grace the envelope. Grace opened it with trembling fingers and found a letter inside. Her eyes widened as she read it. It's a scholarship, she whispered in amazement. For Daniel, to attend Green Hill International School. That was one of the reputable private schools in Accra. The fees listed were far beyond what she could ever afford, but the letter clearly stated it was a full scholarship funded by a company initiative. Grace looked up, tears welling again. Michael, this is too much. Michael's expression was soft and earnest. Daniel is a bright kid. He deserves a strong education, and I have a feeling he'll thrive in a good school. Consider it part of our company's commitment to supporting families. He gave Daniel a wink, and also a thank you to our young hero here. Daniel's face lit up like the sun. I get to go to Green Hill School? He exclaimed. He had heard of the school. It had a big playground and a library full of books, and even a computer lab. He threw his arms around his mom. Mom, did you hear? I can go to a new school. Grace hugged him tightly, overcome with joy and disbelief. Then she looked at Michael and Karen, trying to find the right words. I don't know how to thank you. This will change our lives. I promise I will work so hard and do my very best in the new role. And Daniel will study hard too, won't you, Danny? She ruffled her son's hair lovingly. Yes, I will, I promise. Daniel nodded eagerly. Karen handed Grace some papers, including details about the new position and training schedule. We have everything arranged. You can take another week to rest, and then start fresh in the new role. And Daniel can begin at his new school next term. Grace felt as if she were dreaming. In a matter of days, her world had turned upside down, from being bullied and hopeless to feeling valued and optimistic about the future. She looked at Michael, who had been relatively quiet as Karen went over the details. He was watching Grace with a pleased expression, almost as if her happiness was his happiness too. Their eyes met, and Grace felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Thank you, she whispered again, holding his gaze so he could see the depth of her gratitude. You've given us hope. Michael's cheeks dimpled with a modest smile. You're very welcome. To be honest, seeing you both happy is all the thanks I need. That evening ended with heartfelt handshakes, and even a quick hug from Daniel to Michael, which made the CEO laugh in delight. After Michael and Karen left, Grace sank onto her sofa, pulling Daniel into her lap, despite his protest that he was too old for it. They giggled and cried tears of joy, marveling at how kindness had swept into their quiet life like a refreshing breeze. Outside, night fell over Accra, the city lights twinkling. In a cozy apartment on a quiet street, a mother and son went to sleep with full hearts, dreaming of the new beginnings awaiting them. Weeks turned into months and life blossomed for Grace and Daniel in ways they never imagined. Grace thrived in her new job as an office assistant. At first, she was nervous, dressed in a crisp blouse and skirt instead of a cleaning uniform, sitting at a computer answering phones. But her innate diligence and quick learning soon shone through. Her colleagues were welcoming, perhaps having learned a lesson from what happened, and Grace found herself smiling more each day, growing in confidence. She often crossed paths with Michael in the halls or during meetings she helped arrange. He always made a point to greet her warmly. Good morning, Grace. How's Daniel liking school? Little interactions that sent a pleasant flutter through Grace's chest. As for Daniel, he settled into Green Hill International School as if it were meant for him. He made new friends, impressed his teachers with his eagerness, and entertained them with the proud tale of how he stood up to a bully to save Mom. He would come home each afternoon bursting with stories about the library's books or the science project they got to do. Grace's heart swelled seeing him so happy and thriving. None of it would have been possible without Michael's intervention, a fact she remembered every single day. During this time, Michael didn't disappear from their lives after doing his good deeds. On the contrary, he became a regular presence, first through periodic check-in calls or a quick chat at work, and then through more personal gestures. One Saturday, he invited Grace and Daniel to join him, and a few colleagues for a community charity event, painting a local orphanage. Daniel spent the day proudly by Michael's side, the two laughing and joking as they speckled each other with paint. Grace watched them with affection and growing admiration for the man who had shown such a big heart. After the event, Michael drove them home and stayed for a simple dinner of jollof rice that Grace cooked. It was the first of many friendly visits. Soon, Michael was stopping by their apartment occasionally, sometimes with groceries. "I was at the market and thought you might like these fresh plantains," sometimes with books for Daniel or new uniforms for his school. He always had an easy, genuine manner that put them at ease despite the differences in their life circumstances. In turn, Grace and Daniel's home became a place where Michael could relax and be himself, away from the pressures of running a big company. He would roll up his sleeves and help wash dishes after a meal, or sit on the floor playing Ludo, a board game, with Daniel, much to the boys' delight. As months passed, the connection between Grace and Michael deepened naturally. What began as mutual respect and gratitude blossomed into friendship and then something more tender. They found comfort in each other's company. Grace admired Michael's humility and generosity, and Michael was drawn to Grace's gentle strength and the warmth that filled their tiny home whenever he visited. Both were a bit cautious. Grace couldn't imagine a wealthy, successful man like Michael would truly be interested in her beyond friendship, and Michael worried about overstepping given he was her boss. But with each shared laugh, each meaningful conversation as they sat on her sofa after Daniel had gone to bed, their bond grew undeniable. One late afternoon, about 6 months after the bullying incident, Michael showed up at Grace's office desk with a bouquet of yellow sunflowers, cheerful and bright, much like the effect Grace had on his life recently. Grace's colleagues nudged each other and grinned as they watched the young CEO, looking a tad nervous, ask her, "Grace, would you allow me to take you out to dinner as a date?" Grace was taken aback for a moment, eyes wide. Then her face broke into the most beautiful smile, her answer clear in the happy tears that sprang to her eyes even before she whispered, "Yes, I'd love to." It was an emotional moment, for both of them. Michael let out a breath of relief and joy, and a few people nearby quietly cheered. That evening, Michael arrived at Grace's home dressed smart casual and found Daniel bouncing with excitement. "Are you going to be my mom's boyfriend now?" the boy asked with innocent bluntness, making both adults blush and laugh. Michael knelt to meet Daniel's eyes. "Well, I hope so. Would you be all right with that, Daniel?" he asked gently. Daniel threw his arms around Michael in a spontaneous hug. "Yes, you make Mom happy, and you're already like my best friend," he declared. In that moment, Michael felt his heart swell with love for this incredible child and his amazing mother. Grace stepped out, looking shy in a pretty dress that Michael had sent her as a gift, after cleverly finding out her size from one of her friends at work. Michael's jaw nearly dropped. To him, she was always beautiful, but seeing her all dressed up with her hair softly curled, he was speechless for a beat. "You look stunning," he managed, offering his arm. Grace flushed with pleasure. It was the first proper date she'd been on in years, and she felt both excited and safe with Michael by her side. Their dinner under the stars at a nice restaurant in Accra was nothing short of magical. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their past, their hopes for the future, and their mutual love and concern for one special boy dozing off at home under Auntie Amma's watch. When Michael drove her back, he walked her to her door and, with utmost gentleness, gave her a sweet goodnight kiss. A new beginning of love that left them both smiling like teenagers. From then on, Grace and Michael were a couple. They navigated the unique dynamic of their relationship with open communication and care. Michael even offered to step back as her direct boss by placing her under a different supervisor to keep things professional at work. Grace continued to excel in her job, and Daniel practically bragged to anyone who would listen that Michael was his almost dad. Years later, on a beautiful breezy afternoon, Daniel, now 10 years old and tall for his age, stood in a neat suit, holding a satin cushion with 2 rings. His grin was as wide as the horizon. He was the ring-bearer at the wedding of Grace and Michael. The small chapel in Accra was filled with friends, family, and co-workers who had witnessed the extraordinary journey that brought them all here. Grace walked down the aisle in a simple, elegant white gown, tears of joy in her eyes as she met Michael's loving gaze waiting for her at the altar. In the front row, Auntie Amma and a few of Grace's old neighbors sniffled happily, remembering how far she'd come. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. Michael promised to always protect and cherish Grace and Daniel, to be the husband and father they deserved. Grace thanked him for seeing her worth and bringing sunshine into their lives. Daniel even got a special mention in the vows, which made him puff up with pride. At last, as the officiant declared them husband and wife, Michael gently cupped Grace's face and kissed her, sealing a love built on courage, kindness, and respect. Daniel clapped louder than anyone, then rushed forward to hug his mom and his new dad. Michael hoisted the boy up in a joyful embrace, and the 3 of them laughed together as a family. Outside the chapel, under the golden Accra sun, they posed for photos, Grace radiant with happiness, Michael beaming, and Daniel jumping into a shot with a comical grin. In every picture, Michael's arm was wrapped around both Grace and Daniel, holding his family close. From a quiet street in Accra to the halls of a corporate office, fate had brought together a little boy's courage and a compassionate man's kindness. Grace often reflected on how she thought her life would always be a struggle in the shadows, yet here she was, loved, respected, and hopeful. Daniel had gained not only a better life and education but also a father figure who adored him. And Michael, who once lived a somewhat lonely life at the top, found true happiness in the warmth of a small family. They lived happily together, supporting one another through all of life's ups and downs. Their story became a favorite tale told in the neighborhood, proof that sometimes the bravest hearts belong to the smallest people, and that a single act of standing up for what's right can spark a chain of events that leads to the most beautiful of blessings. Their happily ever after was well-deserved, built on love, bravery, and the simple kindness that turned strangers into family. Thank you for listening to Tales by Kwame. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful tales. Until next time, keep the stories alive.